Infernal Blessings. Back with another one. Let me stop. Alright, get the announcements out the way real quick. First and foremost, if you are interested in signing up for the different classes I offer, obviously one of the most frequent emails I get all the time, what kind of classes you offer, how can I sign up for your classes, this, that, and the third. Let me just make sure that's recording. Okay, it is. The way to sign up for my classes and get into all of the different ongoing series that I have going on: Luciferian Magic, a Self-Mastery class, Telepathic Sorcery, Sith classes, Ancient Egyptian Vampiric Magic class, North Left-Hand Path Mythology and Runes class, Eastern Left-Hand Path Occult class. I'm trying to think of something. Not Santa Morte, I'm sorry. Shadow work classes, which we resume that next month, and we're pretty knee deep in that, going on 18 and 19. Kundalini meditation and awakening class. There's a bunch of ongoing series of classes covering just about every topic you can think of on the left-hand path or the occult. So if you are interested in signing up for the classes that I do, 3 private classes every month on Patreon, you want to go to the official Primordial Chaos Patreon page, patreon.com/Baniti, Baniti. That's patreon.com/Baniti, Baniti. Tier 3 is the tier you want to join. That will give you access to the 3 private classes I do every month on Patreon, and the group ritual we do together at the end of the month. All right. If you are interested in a spiritual reading or a spiritual consultation, the different type of readings I do offer are telepathic demonic readings, Santa Muerte readings, Egyptian oracle readings, deity readings to see what spirits, demons, gods, and goddesses walk with you. Shadow work reading, which is always a good reading to do, especially if you're looking for a sense of purpose or direction and you're not sure what you should be doing at the current moment. Shadow work reading will uncover the shadow and the hidden self and kind of see really what's going on around you and things of that nature. Shadow work reading is definitely the way you want to go. Anyway, for a full price list, information on how to book reading or book readings or consultations, shoot me an email. I'll send you that information. If you really want to speed up the process, it always saves time to send me the days and times you are available and the time zone that you live in. Because as I said, I deal with people in all the different time zones in the U.S., plus I deal with customers overseas, in Africa, the Middle East, you name it. I'm dealing with people from all over the place. So you can send me an email at khnum19@gmail.com, and I will send you that information. Also, the 6th annual Journey of the Black Adept Conference is in full effect. Full effect, people. It's going down, as they say. October 19th to the 22nd, Hollywood, Florida, Cultural Expressions. Kicks off on the 19th, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, meet and greet. Flashback Diner, baby. That's how we doing it this year. Throwback. Everybody's going to be coming in their 80s, 90s throwback. So we're going to have a little more of a theme night this year. Change it up a little bit, have a little fun. Friday and Saturday will be classes, workshops, and presentations from 9 to 4 p.m. We will come back both nights, Friday and Saturday at 8 p.m., 7:30-ish, 8 p.m.-ish. We will all do a group ritual, some nice ritual work we got planned. And then we will afterwards go out, for those that want to, group dinner, listening to some music, hanging out, kicking it, talking a little shit, and all that fun stuff. That'll be Friday and Saturday. Sunday, close the event out from noon to 4 p.m. on the 22nd with a question and answer class that I will be doing between those hours. All right. If you would like to attend in person, you could also attend virtually, which gives you access to the Friday, Saturday, Sunday classes. So shoot me an email, khnum19@gmail.com, and I will send you information, whichever you request, virtually or in person or both. Send me that, and I'll get that information over to you. Also, keep in mind all the new content is being uploaded, in addition to some existing content, to the Primordial Chaos official podcast, which can be found on Spotify and all major podcast platforms. The direct link to the podcast, along with my contact information, the Patreon page link, everything I pretty much went over is in the description box of the video. All right, now that we got the formalities out of the way, the announcements, right? I want to talk about Leviathan energy, right? We talk about the void all the time, the abyss, working with the Qliphoth. We talk about a lot of the Qliphothic beings, such as Lucifer, Samael, Naama, Beelzebub, some of the different cliffs of the different spirits and demons that sit at the gates to get into those cliffs, etc. Let's talk about now the very essence of where this all has its origination, right? So, again, remember, these are quick tutorials, right? It's not my, usual live where, I'm on there 3-4 hours going in depth. Keep that in mind. It's going to be quick, so I can't cover everything. But just so maybe we have newer people listening to this video, what is Leviathan? I got to make sure we clarify that, more so for new people. I would hope you more seasoned practitioners know what Leviathan is, but then again, sometimes you never know. You'd be surprised, right? But for newer people, maybe searching, coming across this video, interested in the left-hand path or the occult or self-math or all those things, let's establish first what Leviathan isn't. Leviathan isn't some type of being or deity or God, just like Baphomet isn't, right? I have to make that clear. Why? Because you will come across information, whether it's in books and videos, where some people will portray Baphomet or Leviathan in this case. I'm only bringing the Baphomet in because I see this done with Leviathan. So Leviathan, and the reason why the human mortal mind does that, it's like humans need to put this supreme figure / supreme being ruling over everything, right? It's still that God complex, that inferiority God complex that people still fucking struggle with. They still have to place some type of inferior being outside themselves that controls everything. So Leviathan isn't any kind of monotheistic God or supreme being that rules, etc. Now, you might have heard the connection and terminology with Leviathan as it's referred to as the great dragon of the sea. In metaphorical, in terms using from an occult or esoteric perspective, it refers to as that great dragon of the sea, right? That great sea monster that not even God dare goes up against and challenges. That great, it's mentioned in Job. It's mentioned in multiple places in the Bible. I just don't have the quotes all offhand while I'm driving. I've gone over this many times before, but Job 38, there's other aspects that's there in the Bible. And it refers to it as this great serpent energy, dragon energy, this great sea creature, this seven-headed monster of the water and the abyss. Now, we know when we look into the seven heads of Leviathan, this is symbolic, okay? So let me make it clear. There's no such thing literally as Leviathan as a deity. There's no such thing literally as Leviathan as some literal seven-headed monster like the Bible describes. So let's get that out of the fucking way. All right? Is it connected to the serpent energy? Yes, because the serpent energy, and this is why it's always attributed to water, to the dragon. There's a connection with the water and the dragon, because even when you go back into ancient Egypt, you will also see it referred to, the primordial chaos, and Leviathan referred to as the chaotic waters of Nun. Right? Nun is one of the Ogdoads. There's 2 of those 8 Ogdoads in ancient Egypt who are known as sea creatures. The Ogdoads, when you study ancient Egyptian mythology, they were beings that came from the water. Is there a connection there with the Dogons in Mali? Some say so, yes. Dr. Delbert Blair used to refer to it, the ziggurat pyramids in ancient Egypt, that tied and laid a connection into these quote-unquote reptilian type of beings. But the Ogdoads are water deities. Very clear when you're researching in Egypt. There's 8 of them. There's 2. There's a male and always a female counterpart. So there's Nun and Nunet. Nun is referred to as the chaotic waters. Okay? And it's that void, that abyss, that darkness where all things emerge. Right? Leviathan represents a state of existence. And I can only explain this using English words in the English language, which is going to be a little bit limited. To truly experience what Leviathan is, like I've said, through your ritual work, Doing ritual work where you vibrate outside of three-dimensional concepts, person, place, and thing, is where you start to get clarity on these things. So again, we're trying to explain something that goes beyond three-dimensional existence. So we're going to do our best to explain that in English in a very limited form, unfortunately. All right? I can only do my best explaining that. You will see some describe it in certain grimoires and books, and I like this definition because I think it captures the essence of what Leviathan is. You will hear it referred to sometimes. It represents the principle of continuity and existence. So what does that mean? When you hear that, what does the principle, what is a principle? So that eliminates right there out the gate. It's not a deity. It's not some type of God or spirit. It's a principle that represents all these things that we talk about on this path: the clip pot, the void, the abyss, the demonic gods and goddesses, the spirit. All of this emerges from that principle of continuity and existence. That Leviathan or Leviathan energy, depending on how you pronounce it, that emerges from that primordial chaos, that darkness, that void, that abyss. Therefore, you have the connection with the deep sea, because as it says in the Bible in the first chapter of Genesis, right? And why monotheistic religious people ignore this shit and never really, focus on it for whatever reason. If you read the first chapter of Genesis, the first few verses, it says, "And God's spirit roamed across the void and the deep." Right? So it says God existed in the void and the deep. He existed in the abyss. He existed in darkness, which is obvious because later on down in that chapter, when he starts talking about creation, he says, wait, later after that, let there be light, which is confirmation that their biblical God existed in the void and the deep and the abyss and darkness. So darkness cannot be a spooky thing. It's reversed. They've been tricking us for years. And what do these religions all promote and teach you? Come into the light. Come into the light. Now, the light, life, and love. Light this, light that. You need to be light. It's not the same when we say as Luciferians, you are an illuminated one. We don't mean that type of light. And you see the stereotype and the programming. You see pictures of biblical characters like Jesus, and they put these halos glowing around their head. Right? Everything's coming to the light, coming to the light. Well, the light blinds, the artificial light, the bad knowledge, the incorrect, the systems of indoctrination and programming. Those lights blind and create ignorance. We know it has, when you're connected to Leviathan energy, we know it has its essence, its beginnings, its root in the darkness, in the void, in the abyss, in that state of nothingness, which was perfect before it became corrupted. And many things emerged from that darkness. And as it emerged from that darkness, it evolved into a multitude of things from what it used to be. Because remember, if I said all this is about manipulating energy, Leviathan does represent an aspect of energy, which is existence. And that's why I say you can't destroy energy. It can only be manipulated. But energy can be manipulated for, mischievous ways to corrupt. So you hear the word manipulate and you automatically think that's something negative. No. Manipulate something doesn't always mean it's negative. You can manipulate something, break it down for something beneficial or positive for your personal growth. But there are those that can manipulate shit and use that knowledge or that higher understanding to keep people mentally indoctrinated and enslaved. So that's what I mean when I say they manipulated these concepts and principles for personal gain and control. Okay? So we're dealing with the principle of continuity and existence. Which one is confirming when I'm talking about cyclical time? Because Leviathan works under those principles of cycles. When we talk about existence and we talk about time, right? It is this cycle that is continual. Therefore, we get the term the principle of continuity and existence. It doesn't have a beginning or an end. Anytime you put a beginning and an end on something, you are limiting yourself. You are limiting, one, who and what you are, the origin of what you emerged from, and you're dumbing down, the capability of expanding your knowledge and growing. Because once you stamp a beginning and an end on something, guess what? You are also trapped in the beginning and the end of what you are claiming is the beginning and the end. So you stamp yourself into that statement or declaration you're making. So most religious people, they stand by that. They believe that there was a beginning and an end, and it's an illusion, right? There's been many cycles, many replenishing periods where people have falsely termed as a beginning and an end because, as I said before, there's been many reconstruction periods on our planet. This planet has been destroyed many times by cataclysmic events, meteorite showers. Scientists confirm this. So a lot of people, when they latch on to dogmas or cultures that pick up from them points, they confuse it, like the Bible in Genesis, as a beginning. And as I said before, the word Genesis is Bereshith, which means to reconstruct. I made that clear multiple times and proved it. It's not the beginning or the so-called beginning of everything like some people believe. You're part of the cycle process, whether you're aware of it or not. You're going through one of the many cycles that are continuous. That's what Leviathan is. And when you understand, it's almost like the circle, right? The science of the circle in quantum and metaphysics. As I said many times before, the Ouroboros, and I want to connect that because that's connected to the Leviathan energy and the Leviathan principle. It's like if you draw a circle and say somebody drew it on a piece of paper, you turned around. And after they were done drawing that circle, you turned back around. You wouldn't know where the beginning of that circle starts and ends. Only the person that drew the circle knows where it begins and knows where it ends. That's basically how you create your universe within a universe. That's how you create your magical reality. This is what I mean when I've said in many videos over the years, it's like I live, when I talk about how you are shifting between two worlds that exist side by side from each other, you're living with literally two worlds if you really understand how that works. This is what I mean. You're living within the reality and the paradigm of your world and how you created it, and you're the center of that world. And then you're living in the outer world that exists around you. What we know is the mundane world. It takes a little bit of work and study and ritual practice to get a real personal understanding of that. I know on the surface you might grasp what I'm saying. I can only explain it the best way I can using, again, words. Some of you are clear what I'm talking about. Some of you might understand it on the surface, but just may not be fully there and grasp the understanding. It may not make sense to you, and that's okay. You'll get it in time, and I'm not telling you to accept or believe it. That's why I say you'll get it in time through your work, your practice, your spiritual discipline. It'll come. But this is what Leviathan really represents. When somebody's locked in and connected to the Leviathan energy, they're connected to, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, they're connected in totality to what everything of this path represents. Right? Even when you get into, like, I did a video a few weeks ago on Tiamat, right? Talking about the divine feminine that manifested out of that primordial chaos in the form of Tiamat, which leads us to other female gods and goddesses, demons and spirits. Right? So the primordial mothers, as they refer to the first gods or goddesses of creation, right, have their root in Leviathan. Tiamat has its root in Leviathan, right? So that can't be negated. And this is why we know the primordial mother and the female emerged first, especially when it comes to civilization on our planet. Yes, we know through patriarchal systems of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, it's basically male domination and male chauvinism, where everything is promoted. The male was first, the woman is submissive. That was all done intentionally by men, as I said many times before. We know when we go back and really do the research and we look at the role of goddesses like Kali, like Lilith, Tiamat, we get a whole different picture. Not the picture they've been painting in religion for a long time now. Because if people embrace the understanding of Leviathan in this path, you would look at the feminine or the female in a totally different perspective. You would look at her royal divinity as a goddess that walked this earth long before we were even here. And this is a hard pill for some men who got egos to swallow. I've always embraced that. Even prior to being on the cult, even going back years ago in the 80s and the very early 90s through Kemetic paths or ancient Sumerian paths and other systems of consciousness, etc. Okay? Like in Egypt, always promoting the female and upholding the female in high regard. I think part of it I get, as I told you before, I mentioned before over the years, I'm raised in a family with 3 sisters and a strong mother. And these weren't girly girl women. They were very feminine. They were women, but their nature, their character, their spirit, they didn't take no shit. So that's what I mean. I was raised by very strong women, and I always respected the female. And I'm not just saying this talking shit to try to get brownie points on camera. I say this from experience. And I can honestly say never put my hands on a woman, right? It's different for me, very sensitive to me, being around women my whole life. Yes, I had male cousins, male friends and all that. But being in a house for, damn near the first 16, 17 years of your life, and constantly around women, no brothers, 3 sisters, constantly around my mother, yes, and I was a mama's boy, I ain't gonna lie. I loved my mother to death, I ain't gonna lie. My mother spoiled the shit out of me. I was the only boy. I was one of those dudes. You couldn't say shit about my mama. I'll fuck you up in a minute. You don't say nothing about mama. So I believe I always had a natural connection to that female energy, even prior to being on any of these paths of spirituality. But we know if we're connected to the Leviathan energy, we really understand the place of the feminine principle and the male principle. Okay? You can't deny it and negate it. And as I said, all these gods and goddesses we work with on this path, I don't care what, it could be the Goetia, it could be any of these things, they all emerged from that primordial chaos, from whence everything came out of. There is where you find the Leviathan energy of continuity and existence. Somehow, as time evolved, people took these ancient principles, men, and created religions. So what they had to do was they had to mortalize all this. So you could connect with it. And this is why it's hard for religious folks to grasp anything outside of that religious understanding that they have. Because religion is centered around man worship. There's always a man in the form of some god. And humans that are trapped in religion can't conceive spirituality without there being some man, God figure ruling over them. So they took a lot of these concepts and they watered them down. They diluted them. And they took stuff like Leviathan, and now we got stuff like God, the Most High. He exists in some spooky place called heaven, right? They took it, they spooked it out, and the goal was to take you as far away as they could from the truth. And this is where we get the birth to a lot of these very new man-made religions that were started just 6,000 years ago. Barely. Okay? And it's taken us away from the higher understanding. For an example of what a concept like Leviathan really represents. Right? So now we're looking outside of ourselves to connect with deity and spirit. We're looking outside of ourselves for salvation. And this is why a lot of the symbolism, the terms, and the things we do on this path scare people and freak them out. It's their ignorance. Because they've been indoctrinated. And I like kind of using the word now, infiltrated, because it's more what it is. They've been infiltrated with misinformation. And it's just, if some people would use their common sense, you'd be able to understand it. But as I've said many times before, unfortunately, and I stand strong and firm in this, not everybody has common sense. You either have it or you don't. You can't teach somebody to have common sense. It doesn't work. Okay, I've said that many times before. So you either have it or you don't. There's no in between. Okay. Anyway, I've kind of reached my destination. I'm going to wrap this video up. So before I do that, again, if you need to contact me, you can reach me at khnum19@gmail.com. If you want information on how to sign up for my classes, go to the official Primordial Chaos Patreon page at patreon.com/Baniti, Baniti. Tier 3 is the tier you want to join and sign up for. That will give you access to all of the monthly classes. 3 of them I do every month on Patreon for Patreon members only. And in addition, that'll get you access to the group ritual, okay? If you're interested in a reading or a consultation, again, shoot me an email. It's in the description box of the video, khnum19@gmail.com. 6th Annual Journey to Black Adam Conference, same email. If you want information on that, hit me up. Remember, all this new content is being uploaded to the Primordial Chaos podcast, which is located on Spotify and all major platforms that carry podcasts. And also the direct link of that is in the description box of the video. All right. Other than that, that'll complete this video on Leviathan. Hopefully this helped you. Frontal blessings, and we'll talk soon.